All right, still waiting on Mila, but before we get started, do you guys have any questions about how we're running things? I wasn't CC'd on the emails you received, so I'm not sure what you've been told.
If you could just go over the structure, just like a speed run of it for us again, that would be helpful.
Okay, sure. So today's a little bit different than what we've usually done. Normally it's a structured debate format, but because of the size of this one and because we're trying something new, it'll be more like a discussion or a seminar. So I have some guiding questions in case the conversation dissipates. But other than that, it's very much we discuss the topic, the problem, we'll discuss solutions, and we're really going to move from solutions to topic, solutions, not solutions, problems to solutions. Okay. And I'll go over the formatting a bit in my beginning spiel. Yeah, so it's really a casual discussion. We'll also have questions in our YouTube live stream, so as those come in, when Mila comes, she'll ask those, but I'm not sure if she's getting my text. So if she doesn't show up, I will probably be the one asking those. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. Hey, Mila. All right, unless you guys have more questions, we can go ahead and get started. Suhan. Actually, let's go ahead and turn on our cameras. Alrighty. Okay. Lindsay, I will be, sorry, hi, my name is Lindsay. I'll be the moderator for today's debate. I'm filling in for our usual chief debate officer, Kaden, who is unable to attend. I'm usually the chief policy officer. If we want to go around and introduce ourselves. Mila, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I'm Mila. I'm the Chief Communications Officer of SLAC, and I'm excited for our debate today.
Philip.
Hi, my name is Philip Dye. I'm 14 years old. I'm a freshman at Enloe High School. That's about it. I'm not interesting.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremiah Williams, and I'm glad to be joined with you all today, and I look forward to a very lively discussion.
Awesome. So today's topic has in some ways quite literally shaken the world. As our society evolves, so must our policy and the way we treat each other. The question today, the environment, more specifically the Green New Deal. This debate may be a little excited. We know it's a little bit controversial. So I'm going to remind you guys to stay civil and talk to each other respectfully, and remember that we are all friends here regardless of our viewpoints. All right. So first, some ground rules. Today's debate will be more of a discussion format compared to our past debates, if you guys have watched before. We will feel free to interject, ask questions, and discuss freely. We will have some questions lined up in case of lulls in conversations.
Is she frozen for anyone else, or is it just me?
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
degrees Celsius could have devastating consequences, and unless the world makes drastic changes in energy use and other polluting habits, we are set to hit that threshold in the near future. A solution has been proposed. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, where did I freeze?
A few, like maybe a minute or two ago.
Okay, did you hear the format?
I'd recommend you just go.
I'll start at the format. I'm sorry about that. Today's debate will be more of a discussion format compared to our other debates. We encourage you guys to speak freely, to interject, ask questions. We do have some questions lined up in case of lulls in conversation, and we will be taking questions from our viewers on our YouTube live stream. Myself and our other moderator, Mila, will be guiding you as we go, as well as answering any questions that may come up, and just overall ensuring a level of cohesion in the debate. Today's debate is the first in our series of debates centering around the environment. Obviously, climate change is one of the biggest problems we face today. An increase in average global temperature by 2 degrees Celsius could have devastating consequences, and unless the world makes drastic changes in energy use and other polluting habits, we are set to hit that threshold in the near future. A solution has been proposed in the Green New Deal, most recently introduced to Congress by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York and Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. It is ambitious, but it aims to fight climate change while still accounting for communities who face job loss and hardship with a swift switch to renewable energy. With the US having rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement about a week ago, this proposal and others like it are a very popular topic of debate. We'll start out the conversation by discussing the actual problem, climate change. All right, and our first guided question, just to get the ball rolling, what are your thoughts on climate change in general?
I can go first. I see we have some hesitancy. Climate change is an existential threat to us all. I think that is clear. I think there are still large segments of the United States population that don't really understand that climate change is as big of a deal as we are making it out to be. They think we're just whining or complaining about something. But I think climate change has the potential to spur a wide variety of other conflicts, climate refugees, economic collapse, a lot of different other factors. So I think it's something we have to pay attention to, and we have to take bold, aggressive action to solve.
Yeah, I agree with Jeremiah. Yeah, it's a very large threat to our current world ecosystem and also to our livelihoods, because as you can see in all of those news coverage pictures and all of the articles that's been written about it, you can clearly see the effects of climate change that is happening on our Earth. And if we do not reverse, our world would not be the same anymore, or it would be permanently scarred, and we might not even have a world anymore past 2050. So what we need to do now is just to try to turn it around as best as possible, and just hopefully act as soon as possible so we don't lose too much before we can save it.
Great points. And I feel like the majority of our viewers probably agree with you. Who do you think plays the bigger role in global warming? Individual citizens or large corporations? And why?
I think I would say large corporations play the role because large groups of individuals can gather and make individual changes, switching from plastic straws to paper straws, for example, and have no material impact on the overall environment. So I think large corporations that are responsible for emitting such large amounts of carbon emissions into the atmosphere, who have lobbying power in the halls of Congress to stop regulations from passing to change anything meaningfully. And I think the political capital they have across the world to just pick up their corporations and go to the country with less restrictions in order to circumvent those, I think, is a big problem. So definitely the corporations.
Yeah, yes, I actually agree. The big corporations are the largest factor, and not only the largest corporations, it's also the top 1% who usually tie in with the corporations. But also, I feel like we should also name those because, as we saw, as we can see in many other reports, climate change, the top one make up over 30% of the total climate impact of the entire world. And so, have we ever noticed that there have been large corporations who are pandering to the lower class people, not lower class people, but everyone below them, saying, "Oh, if you save on commuting and if you use paper straws, reusable straws instead of plastic straws, you're going to save the environment." That's not how it works. They're the ones that are contributing the most towards the death of the planet, and I feel like they're the main problem, especially since cars, cows are nowhere close to the amount of pollutants that all the factories worldwide are releasing, and also the coal in West Virginia and China and Mongolia are also producing. It comes nowhere close to how much the corporations are producing all the waste.
Do you guys have potential solutions for this problem? Like, how do we restrict these corporations? Or do we?
Yeah, I think absolutely there are solutions. And I think one of them, which we'll be going into more depth, I'm sure, is the Green New Deal, which is presented to be sort of a blueprint to solve it. But I actually find some personal disagreements in some of the language of the Green New Deal. So hopefully we'll talk about that. I feel like we have to put more direct pressure on corporations on a more broad scale, saying that certain things are just illegal. And that comes from Congress. For example, every time a new administration takes office, climate policies drastically change. Like you mentioned in the introduction, within a week, the United States was suddenly back in an international agreement, the Paris Climate Accords. The fact that that's only within the executive branch, so much can change, I think is a problem. So I think Congress needs to take more long-term action by making some of these environmental standards law and making them increasingly difficult to be just removed by the next administration.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also want to add on that, which I also agree that it's just America, which is supposed to be seen as the leader of the free world, which has such a system that is so easy to flip flop on this kind of issue. It's just kind of really real quick. Okay, it's probably my microphone that's acting up. Hopefully it's better now. I just switched microphones. Okay, so yeah, alright. So basically what I feel like is the biggest problem is that America, which is supposed to be the leader of the free world, is so easy and to flip-flop on these kinds of issues. So I feel like what we need to do, even though most of the pollutants are in the high-level corporations and all that, I feel like the power lies in the people to elect these officials who are able to pass these laws, such as Ed Markey, AOC, Bernie Sanders, such as these elected representatives. Because, as we know, even though America's system is flawed, what we need to do is play the system how we're given, and we just need to kind of play it so we have the ability to pass all these laws so we can actually get something done instead of having, oh, all right, next administration comes in, boom, we're out. Next administration comes in, all right, what's back on? So what we need to do is just rally as many people as possible to be on the same page as us, and with those people who are on the same page as us to vote for the people who are also on the same page as us, so we can get this cemented down into law before a next administration comes in and flips that issue back over.
Those are some great points. Yeah, really, really great points. And America's politics does play a huge role in this. And on the one hand, I mean, that's democracy, stuff flip-flops. But on the other hand, that's a dangerous game. What are on a big topic in the US, the economy, what are climate change's threats to the economy? And because a lot of people argue, oh, these these restrictions, they're going to do bad things to the economy. But won't climate change as well?
I'll let Philip go first.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like this is a very common talking point that the proponents that are against this Green New Deal always like to bring up. Oh, but it's bad for the economy. Something that I'd like to touch on, but I don't want to go into detail here because it's probably going to spark a longer off-topic debate, is that the economy isn't the defining factor of how well America's doing. It's really only the defining factor of how well the 1% and the upper class are doing, while the lower class, even if the economy is doing well, the lower class are still increasing poverty rates and all that. But besides that point, I feel like what we need to do is just clarify on this point that climate change is not going to topple the economy. The reason why it's not going to topple the economy is because the economy for this is not determined by whether we have these restrictions on these corporations. I feel like a major talking point of people is that we're going to lose jobs because of it. That has been proven false multiple times. Even if we close down the coal industries, we're able to open more jobs in the solar, wind, and nuclear energy sectors, and that has been proven to be more job efficient than actually the previous sector, which is oil, crude oil, and coal. So even if it is quote-unquote bad for the economy, if the world ends, the economy doesn't matter, all right? End of story. We're not going to have a world. If we're not going to have a world, why should we have an economy? So, simple question there.
Well, I would contend it's a little bit more difficult than that when we break down some more factors. I do think it's definitely important to talk about the importance of these policies that need to go into effect and distinguishing between very real concerns people have about regulations that don't have the best intent of both the economy and the environment, and then people who are just flat out denying climate change, who are trying to use that as a weapon to distract us from the real change that could occur. But there's some very legitimate concerns people have about overregulation, because this has to be a multifaceted approach. And what I mean by that is it has to be the local government, state government, and national government working in unison in some of these areas, because sort of what Philip is alluding to, the economy will survive even the most ravenous climate emergencies, especially because of the way in the United States it is set up to favor those in power. But what I will contend is that this is going to create political vacuums, even if not in the United States. Rising sea levels will lead to countries being threatened by rising sea levels that are not exactly going to sink or be underwater, but lead to a lot of people uncertain whether or not that's a place they want to continue living, which will lead to them having to move, and which will lead to them needing dual citizenship, which will lead to climate refugees, which will need to even tougher immigration policy in the United States. And then there's political infighting about which refugees we'll be accepting from these different zones across the world. And we can already see the problems with immigration in the United States when there's not that big of a climate refugee crisis happening. So I think that, paired with some of the real concerns that if you overregulate and shut down large swaths of the economy, you could stall the growth of this climate change movement that's happening in the United States, because people who get laid off and then receive propaganda that says the reason you were laid off is because these climate change activists put these new regulations on, will lead to them electing leaders who go against climate change activists, which will then perpetuate the cycle we're kind of already stuck in. So it has to be smart. The regulations have to be tough. They have to be bold, but they can't be miscalculated. And so I think that's something to consider.
A new Dayquil Severe Honey.
Philip, do you want to respond to that? I feel like we're having a good conversation about this.
Yeah, no, I feel like, I fully agree with that. Yeah, because, he did mention that shutting down certain sectors of the economy would, hold on, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So, yeah, I actually fully resonate with what Jeremiah said. Yeah, I may have alluded to some certain things that I may have not capitalized on as much as I wanted to, but yeah, as far as everything else as he's saying, I feel like I 100% agree with that, because the biggest factor of the Green New Deal is that we're going to need to slowly transition over so the world doesn't collapse, as he mentioned, rising sea levels and people having refugees from the places that are not, we're going to have any. It's just the fact that we're probably going to suffer a lot more long-term effects than just having a smoke screen filter put over our atmosphere. People are going to die. People are going to have to move inwards. People moving inwards equals more cramped spaces. It's just a long domino effect. So, yeah, as far as this point has, I don't have anything more.
Awesome. Unless Jeremiah has any more he wants to say. Okay. All right. So then introducing the Green New Deal. Is it the best plan to address this issue? I have a few points that I can bring up if you want more prompting, but we can also just get started.
Philip, would you like to go first?
No, I'd like you to go first if you are able to.
Of course. The reason I ask is because I think I would be put in the unpopular position here. I don't think the Green New Deal is the best policy to go forward with solving climate change, but that does not mean I'm ignorant to the struggles we face. The reason I say the climate change efforts through the Green New Deal would not be the most optimal is because some aspects of it are unrealistic. Now, we have to recognize how big the Green New Deal is. It's a very bold and audacious plan, but I find that even though it comes from, the language of FDR's New Deal, this is not quite the scenario to have such a complicated and complex package that is kind of oversimplified. And here are some of the points I wanted to make with that. One of the main goals of the Green New Deal is to have net zero emissions and zero emission energy sources by 2030. After the COVID pandemic, that has now become unpractical, non-realistic, if you will. But the Green New Deal has not sort of accounted for these recent developments yet, so I'll give it the benefit of the doubt in this regard. But the Green New Deal often includes things like a federal jobs guarantee program, a $15 minimum wage. These are things that are, although important, not directly linked to the problems that we're trying to solve. And I think some would argue that creating a federal jobs guarantee in the clean energy sector with $15 minimum wage jobs is the goal. But the political opposition that can come from any one of those areas makes it almost impossible to pass the Green New Deal. So I guess if you're asking, is the Green New Deal the best template? Perhaps, because no one's offered a better one. There is no conservative plan to tackle climate change quite like there is a Green New Deal. So in that regard, it is the best blueprint. But if we were to take the paper that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ed Markey unveiled at the Rose Garden and tried to sign it into law, I think I wouldn't sign it. So that's sort of where I'm at.
Right, it's actually very surprising that I feel like you would say that, because I actually kind of agree with you on that front, because I would say that even though it is a very big step in the right direction, I feel like it given the current political landscape in America, it is not only unattainable, it is also quite astronomically, by large proportions, unfeasible, because first of all, as you did mention, that net zero carbon emissions by 2030, not possible anymore because of COVID-19. And also, I feel like this whole Green New Deal plan is just not in the right mindset of most Americans, because most Americans are still in the hive mind thought that if they save money every single morning by skipping a coffee or something, and also using paper straws instead of plastic straws, that they might do something. And unfortunately, that's not how it is, but there's still some people out there who think it might be the case. So I feel like the job of lawmakers is supposed to carry the interests of the people in their mindset, and once they fail to do that, they fail to do their job. And I feel like, as bad as it is that America is not geared towards the thought that, oh, climate change is bad, I feel like doing something that is against what most people want is still bad, no matter how good it is, if you catch my drift. So, as much as I want the Green New Deal to happen, it's most likely not going to happen, because of so many people opposing it. And also the fact that, as Jeremiah also mentioned, it's also a really good blueprint, but like it's not really the most. We have to take a step back from the massive step that we took forward, to say the least, because what we are planning to do with the Green New Deal is so much that if we actually manage to do it, it's not going to be off the backs of good behavior. Because as you can see with Stalin's 5-year plans and Mao's 5-year plans and Lenin's 5-year plans, they were all really ambitious. They were all to better the country. But what did it lay on? The deaths of millions of people. So I feel like if we are going to do some good, we have to do it gradually, and we have to make sure the interests of everyone is in the mind, so we don't cause something to happen or something really bad to happen. So we actually cover all the bases and make sure that all of our tracks are covered, so everything actually pans out the way that we want it to.
If I could just respond a little bit to that, I don't know if I'd go as far as Philip in some of those comparisons. I think it's often a dangerous game to sort of align these bold aspirational goals that the liberal aspect of the Democratic Party has with other movements that have happened in history, namely Mao and Stalin. I think that may be a bit of a stretch in my opinion. I don't think we are concerned that the Green New Deal could lead to disastrous impacts where people are so radicalized that they fight to the death. I don't think that's a suggestion I would make, but I would say also, it's not necessarily that I'm saying that this Green New Deal is not obtainable because of its unpopularity. The Green New Deal is in fact quite popular, very popular amongst the American public. I think it has the most support, namely because AOC backs it and has been the champion of it, but also great grassroots organizing by the Sunrise Movement, who early on in AOC's term held a sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office, which had nationwide implications. So I think the Green New Deal is definitely popular, but the Pew Research Organization released some studies indicating that what's popular doesn't always translate to what your representatives do. It's usually what the lobbyists who are in their offices want that most directly impact what's going to happen. So my argument is not that it is an unpopular agreement or that it is bad. I think the politics have changed because of COVID-19 and, of course, the insurrection attempt at the Capitol that have made just, unless there are major climate emergencies on the horizon, they have pushed the climate debate, unfortunately, far back from where it should be. And that is the reason why I say that the Green New Deal, as it was written, needs to readdress how the COVID-19 pandemic will impact these plans. But I think at its core, a 10-year plan to transition to clean energy is something everyone should get behind. I just think everyone will argue that the devils are in the details. And that's where I think the best arguments should be.
Right, yeah, I believe I probably didn't make my point as clear as I should have when I connected it with the unpopularity and popularity of the Green New Deal. I kind of wanted to say that I know the Green New Deal is popular because even people that I traditionally don't think support AOC and all these people even support the Green New Deal. I was just trying to say that even if it is the populace of American people that support it, the vast majority of people who don't support it are more vocal about it and also are able to have positions and authority, such as the lobbyists and the PAC leaders and the corporations who don't want to do it because it's not beneficial for them and it's going to cause them a lot of detriment. And yeah, I think you're right. I probably shouldn't have brought up the 5-year plans in my comparison, but I just wanted to bring up another sort of aspect of when someone wanted to do a sweeping change and put it into effect. So yeah, this is nowhere as close as what happened over there. But yeah, I just fully agree with you on that point, which is just we need to reconsider our path forward and also looking back at what we could have changed and done different and just completely reassess what we need to do before moving forward. Because if you move forward with an outdated plan, it's happened a lot in American history. We saw where that brought us. We have a lot of outdated things in American law right now and unable to change it because, quote unquote, the founding fathers wanted it that way or something, I don't know. But yeah, I feel like if we do not re-look over the Green New Deal and reassess our position on it. As Jeremiah said, we're gonna have bigger problems down the road that we might not be able to fix.
All right, so if I'm hearing you both correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you agree that it's a good blueprint and that a 10-year plan of some sort and probably quite similar with revisions would be good. So essentially it's a good first draft, but it needs revisions. And you're also saying that we need a change in how policy is moved forward, as in either less lobbyists or more of different types of lobbyists.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Not to just detract from the main conversation too much, but I think lobbying in general should be illegal. I don't think there should be specialized interests that have access to our elected leaders in the way that they do. I believe the only people who should have direct access to our elected leaders are their constituents, namely in their districts in which they represent or their state. Um, I understand the need that, there's a lot of different special interest groups. Susan B. Komen or Susan G. Komen of breast cancer awareness is a special interest group. So I understand that making that sort of illegal puts a broad stroke over the whole thing. But when you add into the fact that the NRA is a special interest group, PETA is a special interest group, you start to recognize how many different people fall into this category. And if we could just do away with sort of this apparatus that's really clogging why nothing gets done in Washington unless you have the dollars to make someone's reelection campaign worth it. And I think we should revisit that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I feel like in the great words of someone that I've read somewhere before, it's time to stop having the representatives choose the constituents, and it's time to have the constituents start choosing the electors, because if we have special interests in Washington, it's completely negating all of the elections that's happening. It's just someone rich just because they're powerful and stuff step in and saying, no, you're doing it this way now, and that's completely ignoring the hundreds of thousands of votes that were cast in the winner's side, and just completely negating that, throwing that out the window and saying it's just because they're powerful. And I feel like it really truly is time to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C.
All right, awesome points. Are we ready to move on to our next topic, or do you guys still? Okay. All right, does the Green New Deal properly account for all parties? Meaning low income groups, high income groups who may suffer, all citizens of the US, essentially.
I think that's a great question. I think it attempts to. Its goal is to provide, especially for low-income Americans, sort of a pathway to not only contribute to this new green economy, but also to make a living wage doing so, which is how I alluded to earlier that I understand the federal jobs guarantee program, the federal transition program for people who were working in these high-risk jobs. Maybe they're contract miners or construction workers or working in oil refineries, and their jobs are being phased out in favor of this clean energy economy. So the federal jobs guarantee is really supposed to target these vulnerable groups of people who would lose their jobs in this transition, and sort of guarantee that they will be trained and repurposed and sort of placed with at least the skills to fulfill one, if not multiple positions in the transition period. And then at the very least, for people who are looking to join these new industries that will be arising, having at least a $15 minimum wage for them would make it so that for most states in the union, you can afford to put a roof over your head with just one source of income. So I understand that it is accounting for low-income Americans in that way. Of course, I'm sure a conservative argument could be made that it is disproportionately targeting wealthier individuals in the United States with maybe higher taxes, or targeting business corporate executives. But what we've noticed within the past week with GameStop trending for all different reasons than I would ever expect, wealthy individuals in the nation have a lot more power than they care to admit. And when other people decide to wield it, it's suddenly a bit of a problem and a mess. So we can only imagine how we've been feeling when they screw things up, i.e., 2008 financial crisis. So I just think that although it does incorporate a lot of strategies to keep low-income Americans a part of the transition into the green energy economy, it does, of course, disproportionately target wealthier individuals in the United States. But it's about time that that was true. They should be disproportionately targeted by policies like this.
Yeah, I actually agree with that point with the upper class supposed to be bearing more responsibility on this because, the upper class have had basically everything handed to them their entire life. It's time for them to actually start bearing the responsibility of their actions. With great power does come great responsibility, and I believe that they haven't been held to the same accountability as some other people have, so I feel like it's about time that they should. For the lower class people, as you did mention, the federal, federal job guarantee, does give them a viable source of income, and with the $15 minimum wage, it does actually provide a actual stable life where they can actually afford things instead of having to work multiple jobs and having to stretch to make ends meet and sometimes not being able to have food. But I feel like one thing that people always do mention is that, oh no, $15 minimum wage, all the company owners are going to go bankrupt because they can't afford to pay their workers or something. But that's not really the case, because with more people working now, there's going to be a greater demand for some supplies, because I feel like that's what happens, because as of now, our unemployment rate is still much higher than it was originally. And I feel like once we have the $15 minimum wage and a larger market for jobs due to the Green New Deal expanding the job market, I feel like after that, we would be able to have a greater demand for jobs, which boosts the the gross income of the companies, which actually do end up providing sort of a reverse Reagan sort of income, kind of like trickling up, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like lower class people give the jobs and the upper class people somehow get more money off of that, which is returned to the lower class by paying them more, $15 an hour. So in reality, I feel like business owners would not go bankrupt by paying them more. And also, I feel like, going back to the question, no group is left neglected by the Green New Deal, because upper class bear the responsibility, lower class get more jobs, middle class pretty much stay the exact same place as they were. Okay, Lindsay just left, so okay, I guess we're gonna carry this on by ourselves. That's pretty much all I had, so yeah.
I'm sorry about that. I cut out. Yeah, I did not hear the end of that, but in the beginning, it was a great point. Jeremiah, do you have a response?
Yeah, I have a small one. I'd say I'm not exactly, I don't want to break down the assessment of Philip's response as far as the economic argument is there, because I do think there are some holes there, but I think overall the right idea exists that there will be accountability for all Americans in a Green New Deal. I can't imagine transitioning your economy and primarily focusing on different energy sources and not including everyone. I think that would be disastrous. But yeah, I think he's on the right track. So
Yeah, I am by no means a financial expert, and I just kind of go based off of what I read and what I analyze, so yeah.
All right, great points. And I would agree, $15 minimum wage, federal job guarantee, very, very important things for the low-income Americans, as well as high-income Americans do need to have some accountability. We've seen time and time again, when they're not held accountable, the lower class suffers more and the higher class gets richer and richer, which is why a wealth tax could also help with some of this. Do you guys believe that the Green New Deal is too ambitious? And if it is, do you have suggestions for how to solve that, how to make it a little bit more palatable for Americans?
Okay, I guess I'll start this one. I, for one, did not originally think that the Green New Deal was too ambitious. I actually thought it was a great plan when it was released out by AOC and Ed Markey. However, just like Jeremiah said, recent events has forced us to reevaluate and rethink some of the aspects inside the plan. So originally I would have said no, but now I would maybe say yes, but not by too much. Just kind of tweak a little bit some of the points and maybe add an entire section in there about how we need to adapt and change for the future, say something happened.
I'll actually say no. I don't think the Green New Deal is too ambitious. I think it's pretty much where we need to be. Those are the goals. I just think the circumstances surrounding those goals have just become incredibly more difficult. So if it was hard to get there before, and it sounded like a long shot left liberal policy, throw in a pandemic and some disgruntled conservatives, and now it's an impossible second thought. And I think that doesn't change the fact that the goals remain, right? Transitioning off of these energy sources, making sure more Americans do have access to these higher wages. I think these are all relevant, important plans and policies and blueprints, but I just think the climate logistically of getting there has become more difficult. But I don't think the plan itself is too ambitious. I think if you were to drop this plan in, say, a Nordic country, they would already be on stage 3 of implementation of it. So I think it just depends. And specifically in this country, we are a little bit behind where we like to admit we are in terms of education for the public and acceptance to these basic ideas like climate change exists. That phrase alone, if you were to put it up for a poll with Gallup, you would get a very sad result, that it wouldn't be at 100 or 98 or something, recognizable to what we would assume it to be. But I think the plan itself is not too ambitious at all. I just think logistically, I've looked at how government works in the United States. It is a very difficult process. And in this deal doesn't target those sub issues of corruption, of special interest groups, of working through the halls of Congress, getting the representatives you need to vote for these things. It's just the plan of what to do. Then there's the politics of how to do it. And I think that part is unanswered by the Green New Deal.
Do you think making some of these issues part of the COVID relief would help? Because obviously our economy isn't completely in shambles, but it's taken a hit with COVID, and we're going to need an economic relief package. Do you think part of the Green New Deal could be accompanied into that and maybe make it a little bit more palatable or help?
I think you toe a dangerous line with that. I think it's important, and it's politics 101. Include what you want in the deal or the deal doesn't pass. But if we rewind the clock to about, I believe, 2017, we saw this play out with a different set of scenarios. It was Donald Trump and it was a wall. And that was going to be included to prevent a government shutdown, which led to 700,000 federal employees not being paid for the longest period in history because someone wanted something in the deal not related to the deal. And so I think if you extrapolate just the principle out of that and apply it to something that I think is morally better, the principle is still there. Applying something that is not exactly linked to the deal at hand and trying to incorporate it in there, you run the risk of living long enough to see yourself become a villain. But you also run the risk of playing hardball politics and getting some concessions, maybe getting some infrastructure started, maybe getting some permits removed from oil refineries and given out to some agricultural startup companies, things like that. So it's possible. And I think Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, obviously, is working to include as many things for his personal agenda in the relief package and pushing the new Biden administration to include some of these things in his language that they're putting into this relief package, because it's going to be huge. So there's a lot of stuff that slips between the cracks, from both sides. That's the risk you have. So yeah, I think adding some of these things in is possible. And you already hear talks of a Biden administration wanting to make a $15 minimum wage unilaterally through the executive branch. And is that possible? And why hasn't that been explored before? So I think yes, but of course, you always run the risk in politics of holding up aid for people who really desperately need it while trying to push your own agenda. And that act alone can make people not like your agenda, even if it's right.
Right, yeah. Once again, I feel like it's just a simple case of packing the bill because as you can, fitting the Green New Deal, some of the points of that inside the relief bill, I'd like to bring up a very simple example. You guys have heard of the rumor of Tom Tillis, I mean it's not rumor, but Tom Tillis putting the clause that Twitch streamers can get banned by using copyrighted music inside the relief bill, correct? So I feel like once again, I feel like if we do the same thing that they're doing, which is packing stuff that is irrelevant inside the relief bill, we can kind of see them using it as kind of a political weapon against us because as far as it is, we could just say that they're absolute hypocrites on some things, and just by saying that, oh, but they did this while the Americans did this. While the Americans were starving and going without shelter, they decided to put some of their radical left agenda inside the relief bill, blocking this from passing or something like that. So I feel like if one side is doing it and it's incorrect, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I feel like we should pass it as soon as possible. But I'm just saying that inside the relief bill is kind of a not correct avenue to put it in.
But I will say there have been some efforts to do that. Senator Sanders, for example, wants to include a $15 minimum wage in the relief bill. That way, he, in his words, I believe via Twitter, which I usually despise using for gaining news, but when you're looking at elected officials, that just so happens how they get most of their messaging out these days. But Senator Sanders said, like, this bill will never pass on its own. You must put it in this relief package where they're kind of forced to pass it anyway. And all they can really do is filibuster it in the Senate for a while. And then Americans will get mad at the Senate for not giving us the checks, which will be the highlight of the bill. And then they'll pass it. And then voila, there's a $15 minimum wage. So there are pushes from people within liberal parts of the Democratic Party to include some of these things inside of the relief bill. But like I said at the beginning, I think one of the errors with the Green New Deal is how broad it is. I think it does take bold, complex plans to fix climate change, but overly broadening those plans runs the risk of too much and delivering on too little. And so inside of the Green New Deal, that $15 minimum wage aspect is technically a part of these relief conversations, but I don't consider that what is the core of the Green New Deal. The core of the Green New Deal to me is ending emissions by 2030, net neutral, things like that, electric cars. So to give some basic examples. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like it's just the Green New Deal, as Jeremiah said, it's just so broad and encompasses everything. Think about FDR's New Deal, which basically flipped the entire job system of America on its head and then back on its feet. So it's just, if we take the time of the relief bill to have this opportune moment of sneaking a couple of details inside of the relief bill, I feel like the main points would kind of be dropped, because the main highlight of the relief bill is, well, the relief, $2,000. However, I mean, if another sub-point of the relief bill is, oh wow, suddenly we just want all electric cars, nothing else, I'm not saying that's part of the Green New Deal, I'm just saying that if it's suddenly shoved inside, everyone's gonna take their mind off the $2,000 and concentrate on the larger point because it's more radical or something like that. But it's just suddenly $2,000 doesn't matter anymore. We just gotta stop all of this radical left agenda of changing all gas into electric immediately. So if we do put some points of the Green New Deal inside of the relief package, I feel like we should just keep it small at first, because otherwise everyone's gonna transfix on all the big points and be like, and also because of some of our unfortunate colleagues in the Senate, like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, who unfortunately do not share some of the values that we do, because they represent their states that are not known for being very progressive, Arizona and West Virginia, and also John Tester as well, which represents Montana. So if we do want to include some parts, we need to make it palatable so it actually passes, instead of having parts which are so much for them that even if it does get approval to be put in, it's not going to pass because our colleagues think, nope, too radical.
All right, good points. We have some audience questions. How will the GND, or the Green New Deal, impact the out of control national debt?
Well, it'll go up. That's the reality, because trillions of dollars are requested to solve some of these problems. I think the larger question is, why do we care about the debt? What does the debt actually mean? What is the debt ceiling? Why is that of importance? And what happened to the outcries from certain parts of the Republican Party when deficit spending and things like that were of major concern? What happened to fiscal responsibility? What happened to the debt ceiling not allowed to go past 20? And here it is 23 plus. So I think the Green New Deal will dramatically increase the debt unless we have plans to start diminishing it beforehand. But the Green New Deal makes investments that in the long term start to chip away at the need for the things that caused us to have the debt. There's less reliance on foreign energy sources, for example, because you're creating clean energy sources in the United States. So you're not only creating jobs for people, but the debt will eventually decrease over long periods of time because you're having less reliance on other nations and other entities to source some of these projects. For example, the United States usually would get its oil from across the pond in the Middle East with OPEC nations, part of a trade agreement that completely dominates the oil market. Of course, Canada also is a source of oil reserves for the United States. Also, under the Trump administration, the United States became an exporter of oil and natural gas, which indicates a move in the wrong direction, if you ask me. But it just goes to show that we aren't as concerned about the debt as we once were. And I think the question you have to ask about that is, who do we owe it to? If you were to really look at the debt, who's going to come knocking on the United States' door and say, pay up, or things start to get bad? And I think what we have to realize is the United States is playing a very delicate game that one day will, if not corrected, not end in our favor. And it's, what is the United States number one in? We're not number one in energy. We're not number one in education, math, or science. We're not number one in job production. We're not number one, even with healthcare experts. We're not number one overall in healthcare coverage for the country. So what are we number one in? We all know the answer. Military spending. We outpace the entire rest of the world multiple times over. And so the game we're playing is, let the United States set up military bases across the world. Let's remain involved and provide intelligence, reconnaissance, training, and materials in arms sales to different nations all across the world that rely on us. And if they ever dare come asking us about that debt we owe them, we point to the military budget and say, what are you going to do? Stop working with us? We have military bases just down the road from you. We have, ears and tendrils all across. We have the CIA, the NSA, the FBI working all across the world. What is anyone going to do about it? And unless there is a formidable superpower to oppose the United States, which China and Russia are far behind but catching up, a Green New Deal increasing the debt at the beginning could be a tipping point, so to speak. But I think it should not be the primary concern. If someone is telling you we can't accomplish the Green New Deal because what about that debt? I have a bridge to sell them.
It's just I have a massive bone to pick with the people who always play the but what about the economy? What about the debt card when it comes to the Green New Deal and also other progressive agendas? Because I feel like Jeremiah went for the logical route. I'm gonna go for the immediate switch the question back around on the other person route. So, if you want to talk about why we're spending so much and if it's gonna increase the debt of the country, why don't you think about why in 2017 your favorite people in government gave trillions of dollars in tax breaks to the 1% of the country? If you're so concerned about the debt and the economy, why don't you look at the $900 billion that we're investing in our military? If you're so concerned about the debt and the economy, why is our unemployment so high? If our unemployment was so high, why don't we have people working, which brings the economy back up? That Green New Deal provides jobs, which raises the economy, which might be something that you like. So, something that we do need to consider, as Jeremiah said, is what does the debt really mean to us? It's like, always people are pulling out the debt card like, oh, but it's going to increase the debt, it's going to increase the debt. Yeah, of course it's going to increase the debt. Almost everything that we do increases the debt. But it's not like you owe debt to deity of a bank or something like that, which is like, okay, you have 200 years to pay this back, otherwise we're going to delete your country from the planet. No, that's not how it works. Countries always owe money to each other. Everyone owes money to each other to the point that it's almost pretty much normalized. No one's gonna rock up to Washington, D.C. and say, hey, I want $20 trillion because reasons. Because, first of all, that's not how it works. And second of all, America. What are you going to do? So, something that I feel like I just wanted to inject a little bit of myself into this. When you said, what is America number one, is one more thing that America's number one is probably lowest IQ in the Western world. So, I feel like it's just something that we all need to think about, especially which is at the core of the debate. Why is the Green New Deal and climate change such a controversial topic in the first place? Because of low education and because people are thinking, oh, it's such a communist idea and it's gonna turn America into a communist utopia and the water's gonna turn all our frogs gay. So it's just the very core of our argument is that people are uneducated and people need to actually know what climate change is and what steps that we need to change in order to actually make sure that the people know what the Green New Deal actually benefits and what it doesn't benefit, which does not include the debt or the economy.
So that's actually a great segue into our next question. What do you think education can do to help solve the issue in the future? So Philip just touched on that. So Jeremiah, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I think this is the key question. Education is the foundation to understanding all issues, to even caring about government, to understanding how politics works, to knowing why it's so important to vote for elected leaders to begin with, to work with nonprofits and non-governmental organizations if you are choosing to do that. Education gets you there. And I think there's a line between education and schooling. And right now we have a lot of people in the United States who get adequate schooling, but they're not educated when they come out of that process. So what happens when you have a large segment of your population not able to intellectually respond to the issues that face them? And those issues come from everything to national security threats to threats like the one we're talking about, climate change. And when you have a populace of people who can be fooled by simple taglines like, the left is a lie or facts don't care about your feelings, when people have minimized their entire understanding of the way the world works to a few bumper stickers, you find yourself in a real pickle. And when you have experts who have spent their entire life dedicated to solving some of these issues specifically, suddenly thrown out as not credible or not trustworthy because we decided so, what are we doing? So I think education has to be at the foundation of this process. And I think going forward, we have to revisit our education. Philip alluded to how much money the United States spends in its defense. I would encourage anyone to pull out a simple bar graph from 2000 to 2020 and only pull out the education budget and the defense budget for every year in between and look at the drastic difference between how much money we use for supposed defense, which I always like to add as a side tangent, for Department of Defense, we sure are attacking in a lot of places. But looking at that side-by-side comparison, I think you realize, why is it that we want our citizens to be more able to be employed, housed, and fed if they're willing to fight for your country than educated, housed, and fed if they're willing to learn from your country? And I think that's a question we need to have a few more answers to in the years to come.
Yeah, touching on all those points that Jeremiah did mention, I feel like America is that one big, strong jock on the playground who's absolutely not smart at all, but he's just so smart that everyone not smart. He's just so strong that all the people just kind of bow down to them, no matter how dumb or whatever they say. Because if you take a look at America and take a look at all the other countries around the world, you can easily see that there's a gap between the mentality of Americans and the mentality of other countries. Because if you go to the UK and ask some random conservative on the street and say, do you think climate change is real? They will say yes. Most likely they will say yes, because surprise surprise, they have better education there. And it's not better as in the case of they're teaching them more at a younger age. It's better because they're teaching them the actual important things instead of teaching them why America's so great and us having to bow down to that so much. They're teaching them important things like what's happening in the real world. So if we actually do analyze the education sector of America, we can see that in the last 4 years, the funding for public schools has gone down because of Betsy DeVos, who wants to cut funding to public schools to give to private schools, which, surprise, surprise, benefits rich people. Class divide. So, also, as Jeremiah also touched on, people study their entire lifetimes to prove that this is such a dangerous thing. And then you have people like Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity on Fox News who go after these really, really smart scientists and then just saying, oh, but if climate change really existed, why is it snowing outside? And the people believe them. Because you know why? They're not educated. So they don't know that climate change isn't just hot, it's also cold, because extreme goes both ways. So what we need to do is actually reform the education system so we actually focus on the real things and have a logical thinking mindset instead of having people just suddenly hive-minding on everything on television just because some burnt chicken nugget in a suit told them to.
All right, sorry, that ending. Okay, great points. Jeremiah, do you want to add anything?
I think I'll leave that one right where it ended.
Okay. I'm gonna ask our YouTube viewers if you have any more questions, because we'd love to answer your questions. And in the time being, and probably afterwards as well, because this is really going to be the last big topic we discuss, do you have any alternative solutions? Thinking about environmental policy in general, not just the Green New Deal, because we've already said Green New Deal, great blueprint. Do you have additions, subtractions, or just a whole other idea?
I just personally hope that we can get to a certain place in our society where using paper straws instead of plastic ones actually makes a difference, instead of just people pandering to us and telling us that, oh, if you do this, it's gonna help. It's not gonna help. It's just that the long-term goal in my mind is for actual humans and actual civilians like us to be able to actually make a change in the world instead of all the rich people being able to do whatever they want because they're rich. That's pretty much all I have.
I have two solutions that are probably unique for different scenarios. I think a lot more research and investment should be put in desalinization efforts. So that's essentially transforming salt water from the ocean and making it into fresh water to really stop some of the things that are happening in terms of maybe what will people will refer to as water wars, which a lot of people who follow and study and track global conflicts see that the next major global conflicts are likely to become in parts of the world where there are less resources, specifically water. So we're looking at the Middle East, you're looking at mid Asia, where these water wars, China and India, for example, where there's a dam situation there that, if cut off, could really have 1 billion people looking at a water refugee crisis. So desalinization efforts are a good way of maybe investing in technology that makes it cheaper to have that system in place, and also look at some different resources to protect the environment, because once you extract all of the minerals and salt out of the water, you have to store it somewhere. Otherwise, if you throw it back into the rest of the water, you could ruin the levels that already exist in the ecosystem. So those are just some interesting things I would consider looking at. Another one is some silica. Black attracts heat. That's why if you wear black outside, it gets very hot, very sweaty. But if you wear all white, you might last a little bit longer. So these silica beads are being distributed in certain areas and tested to see if they spread them out over the ice, can they prolong for some time the Arctic from melting? And I think there's some interesting research to come out of that as well. So I think there's a lot of different science innovations and breakthroughs that could be coming on the horizon. I'm by no means an expert. I had a feeling that this was going to be very casual discussion based. So I didn't come in with like 3 textbooks ready to, give out my deliverables or my policy recommendations. But I think those are 2 good areas where we could see some alternative solutions.
Yeah, by no means am I even remotely an expert on this part. My fort is actually more like political science and all that. So the Green New Deal is just something that I happen to read quite a bit about, and I just was interested to see what other people were talking about. And yeah, I feel like those 2 solutions are actually really insightful. I'll probably read more on that. And yeah, I really like those. They sound really interesting.
I did, scrolling back, I found a question I believe we missed. Should we shut down all coal stations? I know we touched on coal a little bit earlier, but do you guys have a response to that?
Yes, the short answer is yes.
And the long answer is no. I think that ultimately there will always be a need for some small forms of non-renewable energy. It's like if you eradicate non-renewable energy from the face of the earth, unless clean energy becomes so predominant that it's like unthinkable as to why you would go burn coal, like it would be illegal by then. But if that doesn't become the case, I wouldn't be like, oh, that small startup company has their material shipped in from a coal factory in Germany. Oh, tisk tisk. Like, if the nation has course corrected, and if the world has course corrected climate change, and it's like clean energy is the default and non-renewable energy is like just so happens to still be there, then I think that's okay. But I think ultimately, yes, the short answer, as Philip said.
Yeah, just
I was going to ask another question, so if you have more response.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I agree with that. It's just I feel like it's just my aspiration to have hopefully to have renewable energy be so large that we wouldn't need something as large as a coal plant to have a ready supply of coal, because I feel like even if we do have a coal plant, that means we still have so much demand that we're going to need it. But the long answer is I feel like we should just try to cut down as much as possible. I would like it if we were able to eliminate all of it completely, but yeah, I feel like at this point, I feel like it would kind of be impossible, but if we do make it to that point, it would be really good.
All right, our next question. Do you think nuclear fission energy is a good alternative to fossil fuels, or is it just as bad ecologically? And I will say, I believe the Green New Deal has us eliminating nuclear energy as well as fossil fuels.
I would actually use this as an opportunity to really plug anti-nuclear advocates who've done a lot of work to prevent the really blossoming spread of nuclear energy that was happening, around the 80s and the 90s. That was sort of all the rage. Nuclear energy was the way of the future. It could power whole cities, not have much waste. And the waste that it did produce was just really toxic and volatile, and you had to store it really properly. I think ultimately, no, we shouldn't be using nuclear energy as an alternative going forward. I think that is something that should be phased out as well. Although there's more research to be done on both nuclear fission and nuclear fusion, I think from the people who created the atom bomb themselves saying, what have we done? And I don't think, obviously, I don't want to minimize nuclear energy to be what nuclear bombs are. They're completely separate. They're very, not even close to the same. But the capabilities for destruction are still there. And the waste produced by nuclear power plants has all the potential to just be spoiled and have all kinds of accidents. Obviously, we don't need to remind each other of Chernobyl, but meltdowns, Fukushima in Tokyo, or in Japan, I should say, were very bad. I can't recommend, I don't see anyone saying, oh, there's a nuclear power plant opening up in Cleveland, let me move there. I don't think that would be the case. So I just think overall, hydroelectric, solar, geothermal, desalinization, like I mentioned earlier, tidal. There are so many different other alternatives that we can invest in. Wind, I forgot to mention wind. Just thinking of all of them. Nuclear is not really necessary, but I understand the appeal.
Yeah, with nuclear energy, I feel like it's more of a stepping stone towards renewable energy in total, because it's kind of like the in-between, with coal and natural gas being such a large pollutant and being really bad for the environment. I feel like nuclear energy kind of tries to provide is kind of like a mix of both. It's more renewable than coal and gas, and it's also better and more it's better than the fossil fuels, but it's still bad because it still has the chance of it melting down, and also the large amount of waste products that come out of the plant needing to be disposed. I feel like, if anything, it's more of like a gradual shift from coal to wind, solar, and all of that, because it's like nuclear energy is supposed to be, as you did mention, in the 80s and the 90s, kind of like burned into our brain as, oh, this is going to be the future. However, as seen in Chernobyl, Fukushima, and the 3 Mile Island incident, it's not going to be very sustainable. And I know a couple of people who are like, but nuclear energy has killed less people than all these people overall, and it's also good. But I'm sorry, but nuclear meltdowns are actually more detrimental to the environment than the coal and gas if it were in the same spot, because those are large scale, but with the nuclear meltdowns, it totally contaminates a spot which you cannot no longer go back to. Chernobyl, even now, it is absolutely uninhabitable. Animals who live there have suffered mutations and all of that. And it would have been a lot worse if the technicians didn't rush back in and save it. Different story, but just think about the damage that it caused. It blew out a whole town. Could have been potentially worse. Could have blown out the entire country of Ukraine as we know it. So it just leaves a little bit to think about if we want to leave nuclear energy as a possible source in the future, because who knows, we could have another Fukushima happen and all of Japan's contaminated. We can have another 3 Mile Island incident happen and all of the Northeast is contaminated. We can have another Chernobyl and all of Europe is contaminated. So it's just something to think about.
And just to add a note to that, Philip, I think to tie it back to the conversation, the larger conversation, climate change, at the rate we're going, climate emergencies are going to happen more regularly, and they're going to be spawned by more intense natural disasters. So if we have an investment in nuclear power plants, especially if we're doing it in nations farther away from higher population zones. So although the United States has plenty of land mass and we can pick areas where they don't have that many people, it's more often you'll find that these nations would put their nuclear power plants in developing countries, or maybe in a different place, that if a meltdown were to occur, there would be less assets impacted, for example. So pair that with increased natural disasters. And what happens when you put a nuclear power plant in the tropic area where you have a hurricane and then you do have a meltdown, or you do have a tornado in the tornado valley where there are less people where you should put them, but also increased risk of different types of natural disasters? What happens if you put them on the West Coast in a secluded area of California, and then an earthquake does what it does? So you just have to be aware that if we're going to have increased amounts of these natural disasters, you're going to have increased amounts of potential for nuclear meltdowns to become more likely to occur. So unlike back when it was Fukushima and Chernobyl, those were exceedingly rare, and nuclear installations were very organized, and it was very unlikely that meltdowns to that degree would happen. So it's like a cost benefit analysis. We know what fossil fuels do. Fossil fuels have long-term and consistent bad impacts, but nuclear power plants have usually very good impacts, but when they are bad, they're really bad. So it's just an analysis of both of those. And yeah, that's it.
Philip, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's pretty much all I had. And then, yeah, I really like your points, Jeremiah.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I will say renewable energy is actually creating a new economy almost, or a new part of the economy. In North Carolina, solar energy is taking the place of some farming. For instance, some tobacco farmers are switching to wind farms, because it's better for the environment, and for them, it's less work for more pay. So yeah, potentially good solution. I don't see any more comments in the comment section. So if anybody else has any questions, now is the time to ask them, and we will start shifting into our conclusion. I'll give it like 30 seconds. If you guys want to have anything to add for now.
No, I think for the conclusion, will we be speaking again, or do we speak now and then the conclusion?
Unless there's more questions, we can go ahead and just start the conclusion for
Okay.
you guys, just a little bit wrapping it up. If you have anything to add or anything you want to tie up some loose ends. Otherwise, I can.
Yeah, I'll just say in short that the Green New Deal offers a monumental blueprint that will probably influence climate policy in the United States for decades to come. I don't think that the Republican Party of the United States will provide a meaningful alternative. So I think it'll be a lot of basing different plans off of the Green New Deal that actually happen and turn into law. And I think there are some brilliant minds like the ones I'm joined by today who care enough about these issues to hopefully one day overwhelm the people who still are holding out and are still resistant to this sort of information, basic information to us, extremely foreign information to them, that change is coming, and good and bad. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah, so as far as my entire thing has been about, so I feel like the Green New Deal is the future of America. And I feel like at this point we have enough people that can get behind this movement. And I feel like once we get the Green New Deal passed, it will be the end of one phase and the start of another one. And I feel like it's very fortunate that we're living through this time. As bad as it was before the start of the phase, I feel like once the phase starts, we actually be able to experience and improve in everything that we do. So I feel like it's just, if we do not pass the Green New Deal, it will be very, very detrimental against our environment. But if we do, it will be a massive step towards the right direction that will eventually cause the world to flourish and go back to what it used to be.
Awesome. And before the official conclusion, we have two questions. One of them was, did did you talk about thorium energy some? And we have not, but do you guys have anything you want to say about thorium energy?
No, I actually don't know what that is at all. So sorry, Ryan.
All right. Next question is a little bit of a deep question, and we don't have that much time, so we will do our best. But is the Green New Deal relevant given the new financial viability of the green energy sector?
Yeah, I think that's an easy answer. I think it's probably more viable than ever. I think you're finding that it's more difficult actually to find people willing to make risky investments in fossil fuel industries because they know that is a losing game long term. So I think you have elitists who do have monopolies over the oil industry, over natural gas, over refineries, over resource contracting, all of these different things. But I think the trend is definitely for clean energy. I think startups in clean energy, investing in those now is something I would encourage everyone to do. I know GameStop's having its moment, but in all seriousness, I think if you're interested in making some long while investments at your ages, I think by the time you come to age 20 and 30 and you've invested in maybe a small niche wind energy consulting firm or something like that, you'll see some nice returns on those investments. So I think in the long term, clean energy is very viable. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. They're lying or they're misinformed. So at least discern between which one of the two they are, and yeah, maybe help them out a little bit or ignore them if they're in the other group.
Yeah, I actually agree with Jeremiah. I feel like with the new financial viability of the green energy sector, it actually helps the Green New Deal because it's kind of like a step towards the right direction of what the Green New Deal is already trying to achieve. Because, with the new, with it becoming more and more mainstream, it's actually helping the first of all the viability of it, and it's also helping the approval rating of some people who not previously might not have liked it, and people now like it. And I know people that have already gotten solar panels installed on their house that previously have not because of something about their energy and it being a radical idea, but I know some people who are actually actively transitioning towards it. So I feel like the financial viability of it actually helps it out. So yeah, to answer the question, yes, it is still relevant given the new financial viability of the green energy sector.
Awesome, great points. And yes, I agree, it's still relevant and honestly makes it easier to implement. All right, and now for our formal conclusion. Thank you everybody for joining our debate, or in this case, a little bit more of a discussion. Our debate series will continue among state chapters, which I believe we have them in Texas, Florida, North Carolina, and New York, I want to say, but that last one might be wrong. Sorry. Thank you for joining us. If you want to attend another debate, hopefully we have one in your state, and if we do, consider applying. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you guys staying on here or is that just the end of the video? I don't know how it works.
That is the end of the video, and I'm hoping Suhan has cut it off.
Okay, I have questions for you two specifically. You can say on. Oh wait, let's find out.
Okay, good.
Yep, we're on. Okay.
Pretty good.
I don't know. I don't remember how I came across this debate, but I clearly think I clicked on something and registered for something without reading the details. So I have to ask. Philip said you're 14, so you're a freshman in high school. Lindsay, how old are you?
I'm 15. I'm a sophomore at MO as well.
And are you guys involved in speech and debate in high school?
I am not, but Kaden, our usual moderator, is, and
Okay.
Nandan, our CEO, is, and I think a few other people on our board are.
Okay, and what state are you from?
We're both in North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay, see, this is really interesting to me. I did speech and debate in high school. I'm actually a college student, which is very fascinating to me. I was like, I didn't know if this was open to college students, so I was like, oh, let me.
We technically are. We aim ourselves more at high schoolers,
Right.
but we accept college students.
Yeah, that's why I adjusted my language. As soon as I recognized, I kind of put my research over here. I was like, no, it's not that. It's not that sort of, no, it's not that sort of thing. But Yeah, I don't know. You guys did great. I don't need to say anything else. You guys, I give you guys advice if you have questions, but I don't think if you do, you can ask. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't done one of these in quite a bit of time, and it's just kind of, yeah, I feel like I really appreciated this whole thing because it kind of like enlightened me on a lot of things that I didn't previously know about, and yeah,
Yeah, I have
yeah.
to say, I've never moderated, but I love like sitting in on these because I'm the policy officer, so I'm really supposed to be more in the second step where we write up a policy and try to work with change makers to get that implemented. But I love sitting in on these because like I feel like I learned so much.
Mm-hmm. And it was just interesting to me because I didn't know what the structure. I got an email, right? And on the about the event, you have to like click and register or something to get more information. And I feel like I've never actually clicked it and I still registered somehow. So I didn't know the time structure. I was like, how long are the speeches? How long is the questioning? I didn't even know the format.
We really
Yeah.
didn't solidify the format until a few days ago. We've been flip-flopping over what we want to do for this one because we're trying to kind of revamp our structure to get it to work as well as possible.
Yeah, no, that's totally cool. I just didn't know. So what is SLAC policies? What is that? Is that like a school organization?
No, so a lot of us on board are from the same school or school system, but we're separate from school.
Okay.
We're really, so it stands for Student Leadership Association for Change. We're really trying to provide a voice for high school students and college students who maybe feel like, well, for high school students, we don't have that big of a voice in politics. We can't vote or do anything like that. So we're really just trying to provide a voice for students and for younger populations to tell our politicians, tell our elders what we think is the right idea, because we're affected by these policies as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I didn't know. I just really excited. You guys are doing great work. I know when I was in high school, I was involved in speech and debate. I did all 4 years, but I would encourage you both in that direction. And when we're back in person, it's more of a rewarding experience. But yeah, I think you guys would do great there.
Thank you. Yeah, I considered doing it this year. I was like, I don't know if I want to start that virtually.
No, it's never too late. I had seniors join. I was like, you will join before you leave high school. From the football team, I drag them in. I was the president my senior year, and I was dragging people in. Yeah, National Speech and Debate Association is where it's at.
Nice. Philip, are you part of debate? Sorry, you answered that.
Not for school. I kind of do it independently around certain places. So yeah.
That's cool. And that's what I'm looking to do too. I was like, wait, is there any independent forums to debate people? And I was like looking up online, and somehow this email came to me, and I was like, who is this? Like Google listening to me again? So I just replied to it, and then I didn't. Yeah. So it was good talking to you all, though. I don't know who the fourth person here is. I can't see them, but yeah.
That is Suhan. He's our tech guy. He's the one who's been live streaming it.
Oh, okay.
He's not really on it. He works on other stuff while making sure our live stream's up and running. Yeah. I actually do have to go. I am late for some practice, but yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Right. Bye. Thank you guys so much for tuning
Bye, see ya.
Get an email from Mila with some more information if you want to join our next steps. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.